When people face challenges, they are inclined to seek out solutions. I'm going to repeat that. It's important. When people are facing challenges is when they are inclined to seek out solutions. The challenge is what drives decision. It's not just what drives the idea of having the conversation in the first place. It's what actually drives action. Welcome, everyone, to the Close More Sales podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about your prospects' pain, but we will not stick to broad generalities and ways to think about it. Instead, we are going to get super tactical and give you the exact blueprint on how to ask questions about your prospect's pain. A lot of salespeople struggle with this. They get nervous and worry they will come off too harshly, or they will get uncomfortable, basically, and want to move on before actually uncovering the consequences of that pain. And then they're not able to position themselves as the solution. And if you do this right, you will be able to position whatever it is you sell as exactly what your prospect needs to fix their problem. These are incredibly powerful tools. So for me to share them with you today, I have to ask that you use these ethically. If you're going to be diving into the most persuasive force that exists, which is the negative emotions around your prospect's problems and their past memories about that problem, you need to know that you are only selling people something that helps them, right? Don't sell people junk. Don't sell things that aren't worthy of your time to be the salesperson representative for. If you're doing that, you didn't learn these techniques from me, okay? So, what is the reason to listen to this podcast? What's the reason it exists? Our purpose is to empower sales professionals and entrepreneurs to push themselves to grow, achieve unimaginable success without burning out, and ultimately transform their lives. I'm Ian Ross, and I am obsessed, basically, with all things sales. And I work with teams across the country to make more money by asking better questions. The most proven path to achieving financial freedom is maximizing your earning potential. In a sales role, basically, it's the lowest barrier, the highest possible ceiling for entry onto that path. Anyone can become a killer salesperson with the right techniques, mindset, and consistency. Everything we cover on this podcast is geared toward one thing: helping you close more sales so that you can live the life you want. This is a newer podcast, which means we're still in the growth stage. So if you get any value from this episode today, follow, subscribe, let us know either in the comments on YouTube or in a review where you listen to podcasts, and tell us what it is you got out of the show. Tell us what is actionable for you. We appreciate it if you would spread the word, if you let other people know about the show, if you're getting any value from it at all. Because if you have conversations where how well you speak determines how much money you can make, you are in a sales role. And if you would like to get better at what you do, text CLOSE, CLOSE, to 33777. And we'll see if we can help you out along the process. So first, now, to touch on this idea, I want to talk about pain as a motivator. Oftentimes, when people are talking about trying to get someone to want to take action in a sales conversation, they might be talking about the motivation, the reason for why the prospect would choose to work with you, or the prospect has some type of issue that theoretically could be solved by whatever it is you're selling. If you're trying to figure out what it is that drives someone to take action, that makes them want to try and spend sometimes a ridiculous amount of money to get change, to have something shift, to make their life easier, to get a luxury good, to lower their expenses in other areas, and they're trying to take action. Pain is the most powerful motivator. It is certainly a more powerful motivator than gain in terms of driving decisions. Because here's a very direct truth. When people face challenges, they are inclined to seek out solutions. Okay? I'm going to repeat that. It's important. When people are facing challenges is when they are inclined to seek out solutions. So if the nature of whatever it is you are selling provides some type of solution, which you should always be thinking about whatever it is you're selling in that way, then naturally the challenge is what drives decision. It's not just what drives the idea of having the conversation in the first place. It's what actually drives action. So in that same idea, effective selling, actually getting someone to want to take action to the point where they're not thinking about it. They're not like, yeah, let me just double check my budget. Like, let me talk to my spouse. Let me talk to my neighbor. Let me talk to the tooth fairy. Let me take my time to figure this out, as opposed to going, oh my gosh, we need this. Effective selling involves identifying what keeps your prospects awake at night. That's how to think about this problem. Now, to be clear, not everything the people who watch or listen to this podcast, not everything those people sell theoretically has a direct correlation to a problem that is keeping them awake at night, not on the surface. Perfect example of this is if someone's listening who sells like luxury watches or luxury cars, sports cars, anything that's sort of on the luxury side, they're used to talking about gain, right? Talking about how nice this is going to make them feel, how incredible things are going to be for them if they get to wear this Rolex to the business meeting. They get to talk about pulling up to the high school reunion in that fancy Ferrari, right? That's bright, that's lipstick red as it pulls up, and that sensation when your ex-girlfriend turns and sees you pull up out of that car, right? They're always talking about the gain. And that, depending on what you're selling, can be an effective thing to talk about, but it is never as effective at getting someone to take action as the pain. So if you can guide your prospects to connect the pain they feel about something towards your solution, you will have a better time selling it. So the nature of this episode is the strategies around asking questions about someone's pain. One of the things that we've talked about here at Disruptors is this idea of pain to pen, right? If someone's in pain, if they're talking about their pain, that is the time, if you're having them feel that emotional, they're reliving the negative experience, the negative motivation, that is the most important, powerful emotional trigger to then take action and sign something, to choose to take action on whatever it is you're having a conversation about. I've added an additional thing to that, depending on what it is you're having a conversation about, and thinking about the progression of the conversation. So I like gain to pain to pen. That is the type of trajectory that makes it easiest to have a real conversation that results in your prospect taking action. So, I mean, even simply put, you can think about this in terms of gain to pain to pen. In the nature of selling that Ferrari, right? Selling the lipstick red Ferrari and that feeling of wanting to pull up to your high school reunion to get to have your ex-girlfriend Betty look over her shoulder and see there and go, oh boy, my gosh, I can't believe how successful that man's become. I'm so, if only it could have been, right? That is a gain sensation. But what gets that prospect, that guy maybe at the Ferrari dealership, to take action on buying it, probably a used car lot, buying a used Ferrari in that instance, but like, what gets him to take action is not necessarily simply staying within that gain part. It's then taking it away. And sometimes I will paint the picture why I say gain to pain to pen, as I paint that emotional scenario of how incredible it would feel if he pulls up to his high school reunion in that car. And then, before asking him to go to the next stage, to actually run credit and take action and do all that, is saying, if you imagine how you'll feel when Betty looks over her shoulder and sees you there, what would how would that compare to if you pulled up in your car you have right now? right? I've taken away the gain in the hypothetical picture I painted. And now he's feeling a loss because he just felt how he would feel if he takes action and buys this Ferrari. And then I take that gain away, and that's a negative sensation. That is always a more effective way to get someone to the actual stage of committing, of taking action. So when it comes to asking questions about a pain, specifically around a pain that exists prior to the conversation. So that one example I just gave, we created the pain by giving gain and taking away. In plenty of circumstances, and probably most of the prospects you are having conversations with have some type of pain pre-existing. I don't have to create it there like with a luxury car. I get to simply ask questions around their circumstances, uncover pain, and then dive deeper into it. And pain is simply negative motivation. There's positive motivation, like, I'm like motivated to do this. And there's the negative side, which is like, I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't want this to get any worse. Now it's time to take action on it, right? That's all it is. And it's just a more powerful way to get someone to decide to take action. So when asking questions around someone's pain, there are 4 pillars. And there's just 4 pillars I move through down a line of thinking about the questions that I would ask to dive deeper into those circumstances. So the 4 pillars of questions about pain are: 1, what is it? 2, how long has it been going on for? 3, how has that been affecting you? And 4, how is that affecting other people? Or how has that been affecting other people? Those are the 4 pillars there. And if that's all I need to think about, there's different variations of each pillar. And if I'm doing this right, I can loop back around as I uncover a new feature of the pain, as I ask something else about it where they reveal a new pain or another sensation associated with that pain, and I can just keep looping around. This is so important because the very nature of talking about your pain means you are reliving it in some way, shape, or form. If you are actively talking about a circumstance that you consider painful, even bringing it up and discussing it, you feel some version of that same sensation. And if we do this right, it can almost be as if the initial pain was getting shot in the arm, and the asking questions about that pain, understanding what it is, how long it has been going on for, how it's been affecting you, and how it's been affecting other people, is the equivalent of extracting the bullet out of the wound, right? That's how to think about it. And it's something that's not a pleasant thing, I'm sure, for the doctor who extracts the bullet. However, it's a necessary step to heal that wound. And that's how you have to think about this as well in terms of wanting to go into these pillars. So for that first pillar, understanding the pain, what is it? There are a lot of, effective questioning strategies you can use to uncover your prospect's pain. But there's some cautions I want to give you. First, be wary of being overly direct with your questions. You always want to be thinking about, if I'm trying to discover more about the pain, is inviting my prospect to maybe share a story instead of saying, tell me about that pain, right? But depending on the circumstance, there's ways around that. And I will give examples at the end of sort of back and forth in a scenario of how you can loop and what this will look like. You also want to be asking open-ended questions. So could you tell me a little bit more about X? Like, what did you mean by blank? Like, so tell me a little bit more about that, right? That's the only way forward when you're talking about pain. If you are closing off your questions with right or correct, you're pissing in your tea, basically. You're ruining this whole process. If you are closing off and forcing your prospect to say yes or no, and you're forcing them down a yes-no path when you're asking questions about pain, it's ruining the entire meal. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. So don't piss in your tea. If you're asking questions about pain. Keep it open-ended, especially at the start, so that the prospect gets to answer it fully and not feel forced down some yes train or no, that's not relevant, right? Don't close off questions really at any point in the sales process unless you're being very, very intentional about it. But especially don't ever close it off when you're talking about pain unless you're, I think I covered on a previous episode, unless I need to introduce the topic first in a very strategic way before then opening it up. But we can talk about that a little bit later. So the goal here is to make sure I'm prioritizing that my prospect is opening up to feel understood, not that they are being interrogated. I don't want it to feel like that happened. Oh, and that happened on April 17th, correct? Right? That type of interaction we want to avoid entirely. It should feel like I'm coming to this conversation with genuine curiosity about what you have said to me to make sure I understand your circumstances enough to then ask the next question, so that I can make the best recommendation, or I can see if we can work together or not, right? That's always the approach here. For the second pillar, the timing of the pain. How long has that been going on for? Timing does three main things. One, it can reveal the urgency of the issue, right? A lot of times people don't want to directly answer questions about the pain right away, and an easier way into the topic is around the timeline. However, when I'm asking a question about the timeline, because even though it's about your pain, it's not as direct as I said around that first question of tell me about your pain. People will feel more comfortable answering it more honestly rather than the way they might mask talking about that challenge if asked directly. And when they are not putting a mask on, what that means is they're more likely to be honest. If they're more likely to be honest, they will give me the right information that can actually reveal their circumstances and actually reveal if there's urgency. So that's the first benefit of asking about the timeline of that pain and how long it's been going on for. It also, in that same aspect of urgency, it can reveal the depth of the problem. So for instance, in a circumstance I'll get into in a little bit here, if we were to say that someone was in pre-foreclosure, how long ago they first got the letter from the bank will dictate the urgency of the issue and also the depth of that problem in addition to the urgency, because those two are hand in hand. They are intricately linked during a pre-foreclosure conversation. So that's something to keep in mind. That was the first two. The third one there, the third benefit of learning about timing is something that I don't see talked about very often as a reason to ask this question. If I ever ask how long has that been going on for, or when did that first start, right? Like, oh man, you're telling me blank. When did you first realize that? The third reason to ask that question is not just the urgency and depth of the problem. It's also because I am trying to stick very tightly to running my sales process. I don't believe in endless follow-up to get someone to want to have to do something. Sometimes it's inevitable, but I'm trying to be respectful of my own time by adhering to a very strict process around that. For me to be confident asking you to make a decision right now, I have to be aware that some people, some individuals might give me some resistance around the idea of making the decision quickly. So for the same idea, if I'm a fitness trainer, I'm a salesperson trying to get someone signed up for fitness training, and I'm asking questions around that person's weight or body image, and I ask, man, when did you first realize you needed some guidance to make the changes you wanted to make? Like, when did you first come to that realization? If they tell me they came to that realization 9 months ago, I can then use that at the end. If I'm asking someone to make a decision right now and they go, well, this all feels really rushed, then I can always say, okay, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that with me, but I know we've only been talking for the last hour or so, but you told me that this has been on your mind knowing you needed to do this for 9 months. help me understand why you feel so rushed. I feel like I must be missing something if you've known about this for 9 months. I did a few things there, right? But now it's kind of a logical approach for them, but my tonality is important there. I'm asking for them to elaborate how they could feel rushed if I am referencing the time frame that they gave me. Remember, this is key. I don't want to give it to them. They need to give it to me. Because if I say it, it's salespeople talk. But if they say it, it's gospel. That's why I'm always asking questions, because I want you to be telling me things. Because if it comes out of your mouth, the prospect, I can then use that as reality. If I tell it to you, if I tell you people have been, you've probably been trying to do this for 9 months, and they go, yes, that's not valuable in terms of how they internalize the 9-month time frame, because it didn't come out of their mouth. They just agreed to it when it came out of mine. That will never have the same emotional impact as if they verbalized it themselves. Another thing about asking questions around time, it shows that their timeline matters to me. And oftentimes you can contextualize someone's pain by how long it's been going on for as well. So it's those 3 types of things there. And can also, depending on if it's been a short amount of time, I can help me make sure I craft a visualization where a better future starts to make sense as the solution, right? And I can also potentially, as I mentioned, the urgency, I can build in urgency within my solution at the same time if I'm asking questions about how long this has been going on for. So if anyone ever wants to give any resistance to this idea of asking, when did someone think of making a change? Again, or how long has that been going on for? How long have you been experiencing that pain? I can get urgency out of it. So I can ask a question about their timeline that reveals urgency, that reveals the depth of their problem, and principally allows me to make sure I can say, I know you've only been talking to me for an hour, but you told me this has been a problem for 2 years, or this has been on your mind for 6 weeks, or it's been on your mind for 6 days. It doesn't matter. It will always be longer than how long we've been interacting. And as a result, it elongates the time in our conversation that I can lean on that so that they never feel rushed. The third pillar is the effects of that pain on the individual. So pain affects people on multiple levels and different ways, depending on the type of pain, the severity of it, and how long it's been happening. So I always ask questions like, so you told me this and you told me this. How has that been affecting you? And I want to delve into the personal impact and ask questions around that. Another key here, because sometimes this is where salespeople feel the most hesitant to try and ask this type of question, because now we're getting personal. How has this been affecting you? Oh my gosh, that's tough. It's a really tough thing to ask if you're feeling nervous, right? So then you're going to stutter and feel awkward and have trouble implementing it. So a very easy way to get through that hesitation that you might have is to implement a version of a third-party story here. So the framework that I've given people in the past is, other people I've spoken to who went through blank, right? Who were going through pre-foreclosure or were worried about their body image, or were wanting to get their family covered by insurance, or were thinking about buying this car or this good, right? They told me, who were going through this challenge, they told me that sometimes that challenge, it would even affect their sleep, or sometimes even their general health. I don't know if that sounds relevant to you. I love this. I love this technique, because if I say, when you tell me that you've been stressed out because of the letter you got from the bank, has that been affecting your general health? That can be, people might go like, no, not really, or I don't really want to talk about my health, right? But if again, there's this weird thing where because I don't want to tell them it has been affecting their health, but if I tell them other people have told me, there's another psychological trick that happens here, which is people go, oh, someone else said it. That must be true. The most important thing is that I'm not saying these things, because salespeople talk is never taken as seriously as some objective reality from a third-party story or the subjective experience of the person I'm talking to repeating their words back to them. So if I'm trying to get the prospect to maybe open up and I feel like either they didn't play ball enough with how I asked the question about how it had been affecting them, or I'm new to this idea of asking this type of question and I feel nervous, I get to make sure that the prospect themselves suggest something. And I suggest it by saying other people who have been stressed out about blank in the same situation you're in, they told me sometimes that affects their sleep or even their general health sometimes. I don't know if that sounds relevant to you. Right? Like being in that level of stress, that oftentimes they find themselves not sleeping. And if they're not sleeping, that maybe affects their work, other things like that. That probably doesn't sound relevant to you. I'm trying to make sure I give them the chance to go, well, actually, I am most stressed about this at night. And because that's when most people think about their stress, right? So then they can go, yeah, well, I think about it at night a lot. Gotcha. Do you think that has any chance of affecting your sleep if you're thinking about this right before you go to bed? Right? I'm not telling them, I'm asking. I can go, yeah, it probably does. Okay, now we've just established the reality that this is affecting their sleep. But I tell them, if you're stressed out, your sleep's affected. They can go, no, it isn't. Right? I want to make sure I'm hitting on the difference here as to why we're phrasing these as questions. It's the questions about their pain. It's not the way I tell them about their pain. What's so powerful about questions is if I ask the question right, what they are answering serves me pretty directly. Now, I am serving them. I'm making sure I'm providing them with a solution that works for them. But it very literally paints the reality with which they are answering with how precise I am with my question. So, and as I also understand how this is affecting you, if you're the prospect in this instance, not only does it allow me to tailor my solution to your problem more effectively, maybe customize what I present, even the way I present that tailored solution can be affected. And I will get to that at the end as well, about how to go from pain to pen, how to actually transition into the decision. For the fourth pillar, the impact on others. So the first one is, what is the pain? Second one is, how long has this been going on for? How has that been affecting you? And then, how has this been affecting other people? This is so powerful because oftentimes when someone is stressed out about something, that stress, that frustration, the challenges either for an individual or sometimes even for a business, oftentimes it has an impact on others as well. And I can contextualize this for myself. I am able to handle a tremendous amount of stress. In fact, I did a whole other episode of the Close More Sales podcast on defeating your stress, not just managing it. But if I know that something that is causing stress for me is actually causing stress for my wife and son, that is a whole other level. Because now I feel compelled to take action today to alleviate that concern. If I can handle the stress, I know I'm fine, like I'm all right. That urgency to take action to fix my stress might not be as pronounced for myself. Even though most people are inherently pretty selfish about how they're thinking, for certain individuals, if I'm able to not only acknowledge that you have a pain, it's been going on a while, it's affecting you, that family is affecting other people in that stress is affecting other people in your family, other people in your life. Holy cow, I hadn't even thought of it that way. Now I want to take action on that. So start exploring questions, and we'll get to those other options for ways to ask this question in a second. So has your family noticed how stressed you've been? Right? That's the nature of the first question there. So if you've been stressed out about this, it's been affecting your sleep. Other people told me that, if they're tossing and turning in their sleep because they're stressed, that their spouse is also noticing that how stressed out they've been. They probably haven't noticed how stressed you've been. No, my wife told me I've been pretty stressed. Gotcha. Do you think that has any chance of affecting her if she told you that she's stressed out by you? Do you ever feel like if she's stressed out, you're stressed out? Yeah. Do you think that could be happening here? Man, it probably is. Okay, well, if you don't mind me asking, how long do you think your wife's been stressed out about your stress? Right? I get to go really, really deep and consider a broader impact than how most salespeople are asking questions around someone's motivation, which is very surface level. So I not only can utilize emotions that are rippling and affecting other people in your life, but the experience of the prospect is I'm showing empathy and I'm humanizing this interaction. I'm a human being asking questions about how it's affecting other human beings in your life. But at the same time, it is a self-serving question because it's deepening the pain and that the reliving aspects of how frustrated they are if they're thinking about their stress affecting other people in their life, which makes it easier for them to take action, which makes it easier for me to help solve their pain, right? My solution can offer healing beyond just the stress or pain or frustration of the individual prospect. Because theoretically, if the person I'm talking to is stressed out and that stress is affecting their family, if I can offer something that alleviates that pain for that one individual, if that individual's family is also stressed out, is also a selfless act for them to solve their own stress because they would help solve their family's stress. Is it starting to make sense? If I do this right, I'm solving so many issues at once that ripples out in other aspects of their life. So this is super key. So I want to make sure I hammer home this point before I continue on. If I am making sure that I talk about all the aspects of your pain, especially as it relates to other people, then by choosing to buy my product or service or hire me or sell me your home or whatever it is, you are actually helping other people. I get to make you a hero in choosing to work with me in the way I ask these questions. That is so powerful. And if you are not utilizing this, you are missing out on the emotional consequences that causes someone to want to take action with you and maximizing, focusing on that point. So now let's take a concrete example of, let's say I've walked into a homeowner's house and I'm having a conversation with them about buying their house because they are going into pre-foreclosure. And in this instance, in this hypothetical scenario, the man told me the reason he needs to sell his home is because he got a letter from the bank. And the reason I find out he got into pre-foreclosure is because he's lost his job or he got hours cut back. So what I can do is I can loop these 4 pillars around to exacerbate his pain. So I want to show you what that looks like. So let's say I'm just role playing with myself here. So bear with me, right? Maybe I'll turn left and right and change my voice a little bit to make sure it's clear who's talking which time, since it's obviously just me. But I think you should be able to get this point. This is off the cuff. This is just following the framework of understanding the 4 pillars of pain. I obviously have notes about the pain and about the questions, but I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this. But the principle applies no matter the circumstance if they are revealing that there is pain. So let's say in this instance, we're sitting across from each other at their kitchen table, and that prospect tells me, yeah, I just need to sell my home. And I go, okay, I know you told me you need to sell your home because you got a letter from the bank. Tell me a little bit more about the hours being cut back. You told me that the hours got cut back and that's the reason you were starting getting those letters from the bank. Tell me about that. And then he could say, well, yeah, I got hours cut back at work and I'm paid by the hour. And so as a result of being paid by the hour, that means I got less money. And then inflation was going up. So our expenses got up just in terms of gas and groceries and everything. And my pay didn't go up. In fact, my pay went down because the hours getting cut back. And I fell behind even just a little bit one month. And then I was going to fall behind a little bit the second month. And I started freaking out. And so I just didn't even pay that second month to make sure I could have enough to pay the third month in full. And then I didn't have enough to pay the third month in full. Right? So he started to reveal the pain. So now I want to go, gosh, okay. That was the first pillar. That was what is it? Now I want to go into the second pillar. So when did this first happen? When did you first get your hours cut back? Right? That's the idea here. I'm talking in this instance about when did you get your hours cut back? When did it happen? How long ago did this pain start? And if they go, oh, well, I first got my hours cut back 8 months ago. That's when it first happened. And it took a while. Okay. Man, that's That's tough. And then you got the letter from the bank. How long ago? I got that. I got that 5 months ago. Right. There was 2 questions around timeline. There's no reason that I can only ask one, but I want to make sure that it's just these 4 pillars, just moving back and forth between what is it, how long has it been going on, how's it been affecting you, how's it been affecting other people. And I got you. Okay, so you got that letter in the mail. Man, what was that like for you when you got the letter in the mail? It wasn't good. Okay. If I'm asking, would you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by it wasn't good? I mean, that's not a thing any man wants to feel, that they get they get that letter in the mail, and therefore I'm not as I feel like I'm not as good husband and provider for my family. Like I'm starting to feel some self-doubt about it. So yeah, that's what's going on for me. Oh boy, that's really tough. I'm sorry you've been going through that. Other people told me when they start to, feel like their identity's been questioned that way, it does things like it affects their sleep and other aspects around their general health even. I don't know if that sounds relevant to you. Yeah, I'm definitely I mean, I've been thinking about this more at night. And so as a result, I'm sure I haven't been sleeping as well, because it's like basically all I think about going to bed. I think about when I open that first letter, which has been kind of tough. Wow, thank you for sharing that with me. But if you've been tossing and turning at night, and you're mentioning that you want to make sure you're as good a husband as possible. Has your family noticed how stressed out you've been? I mean, I'm sure they've noticed that they're pretty observant. In fact, my wife said that I've gotten quiet, is how she described it, which is her word for me getting stressed, basically. Gotcha. I have to ask you, when your wife gets stressed, do you ever feel like that affects you in some way? Oh yeah, definitely. We're a really empathetic couple. So if she's stressed out, I feel it definitely. I mean, it always affects me. Do you think there's a chance that you being stressed out about this letter and not sleeping well, do you have a feeling that could be affecting her? I'm sure it is. Yeah. And your kids as well. If the mom's being affected by your stress, do you think the kids are possibly affected? Oh yeah, they're definitely. I hadn't thought of that. They're definitely pretty affected. Okay. How do you think it's affecting them? I just looped back up. What is this pain? Right? I loop back up. Tell me about that pain. And I can go, well, to come to think of it, like, yeah, the kids have been taking more sick days. Wow, when did that first start? Now we're just talking timeline again. Oh, they started taking, I'm not sure. I haven't been keeping track, right? But like they've definitely been taking more sick days, right? So let's say it didn't exactly play ball. Okay, when did you first notice it? Oh, I mean, honestly, I'm just thinking of it right now. Okay. And then how is that affecting you, knowing that your family's having to take more sick days? Maybe they're actually even sick. Like your wife's stressed out. Like, what's this been like for you? I'm just looping around this pain, right? I'm just touching on these 4 things. So I can say things like, well, when sometimes I've talked to, I've talked to the kids of adults going through foreclosure. They tell me that they don't know how, but word gets out to their friends, and then suddenly they're super, like, their friends know they're going to foreclosure, and that stresses out. Sometimes they even get bullied, which, we're always worried about our kids having negative consequences as adults by being bullied by negative circumstances, right? We get to just keep looping on as a third-party story there about that's affecting kids of people going through this stress. And it's a really specific example, but we've got this whole approach here of like, what's it been like for you? Well, other people I've spoken to, they've told me this. I don't know if that sounds relevant for you. How long has that been going on? How's that been affecting you? I can also say things like, man, has the stress from getting that letter and not sleeping and seeing your kids get sick, has that been showing up in other areas of your life? And then he might go, oh yeah, I guess my work suffered as well. God, so not only have you gotten fewer hours, but you also feel like you're not even doing as well when you're there. Are there any other consequences not fixing that? Right? When has your family noticed how stressed out you've been about this thing? Have you because there's always ways I can loop around, Who else might feel like this has been tough on them is another way to get that open. Man, who else at work would feel like it's been tough on them knowing that this has happened for you? This is how to ask questions about someone's pain. It's just looping these 4 pillars. So if I can do this effectively, I can then transition into the pain to pen part, right? So that's going, okay, once I've asked around that pain in that same example, if I go, okay, if we can buy your house at a price that makes sense so that you don't have to be affecting your sleep, even if you got your hours cut back at work, you're going to have enough money to take care of your family. Your wife's not going to be stressed out in a way that's affecting your kids. That makes, they're probably feeling it at school. They're getting sick. They're getting behind. We can take care of all that. Make sure you get paid in 30 days so they don't get the embarrass of going into foreclosure, and you just get your cash and you can move on with your life so that this challenge is like this weight is lifted from your shoulders. Do you feel like that would be helpful? He goes, yeah, that would be really helpful. I say, okay, well, I have kind of an uncomfortable question then. Okay. Do you want my help? How powerful is it to get someone to want to take action? If I've been looping around their pain over and over and over again in a way that doesn't feel repetitive, doesn't feel annoying, it feels like I'm just trying to understand their circumstances and coming at them like a human being who wants to make sure that they are heard and understood. If I am doing that, I can then recap the degrees of their pain to them and wanting them to want to make a decision right then and there. It is the most powerful technique and tool to get people to take action. The persuasiveness skills here, it's off the chart if you can do this right. It is unbelievable what you can get people to do. Use it appropriately. Again, to wrap up, the 4 pillars of asking questions about pain are, the first pillar here is 1, what is it? What is the pain? 2, how long has it been going on for? 3, how has that been affecting you? And 4, how has that affected others? It is just those 4 pillars, and you can loop them back around together as new pain points are revealed, as something else is asked. How long has that been happening for? And then I can always introduce third-party stories to make sure that someone goes, oh yeah, that is probably happening to me too. Or not really. Okay, are there any other ways it's affecting you? Right? It allows me to just keep looping. If I am doing this right, the aspect in the example I gave of if the pain of getting his opening that notice from the bank, if that was getting shot in the arm, the aspect of extracting the bullet might even be more painful than it going in. But it is necessary to fix that wound, to solve their issue. That is the point. Like they might even be shoulder shaking, right? Because if I'm asking you these questions and recapping what's important to you when I'm asking these questions, it's the power you get and someone going, yeah, that's so true. Man, I hadn't thought of that. That's true. I'm sure it is affecting them. Okay, now you have a pain you didn't even realize you didn't have. Like it's so powerful to do this. So if you understand your prospect's pain and can make sure that they talk about how long it's been going on, how it's been affecting them personally, physically, how it's been affecting other people in their lives, other people they work with, other people they live with, their family members. If I can do that right, I can get people to take action on things that theoretically don't even feel on the surface like they're related to the pains I'm asking questions about. But the way I've built this up means it's directly related in their mind and in their heart in terms of how they're feeling that emotion. And so that if I'm selling something as seemingly unrelated to your daughter's getting bullied at school as sales training, right? I can link it in the way I ask questions to that direct thing, no matter what I'm selling, whether it's sales training, the example I gave, or pre-foreclosure or buying a luxury car, whatever it is, right? Because if you've been thinking about buying a luxury car and you haven't, it's been bothering you, has that stress about not having found a good enough deal on a good car, has that been showing up in other aspects of your life, right? There's always ways I can ask this question to stretch out and expand that pain so that you reveal to me in your words what it is you're going through. This is a really powerful stuff that I don't usually put out as broad this way because it seems to people who aren't in sales highly manipulative. and really intense to bring up. The important aspect here is that I have their best needs in mind, because if I am trying to sell something that they don't want or need, and I ask questions this way, it's an unfair advantage. It's super unfair to dive deep into how wanting a Ferrari has been causing someone's kids to get bullied at school, right? That seems crazy. But if I do this right, and I know it's something they really want, like that would actually fix their problem, it's worth starting to implement and incorporate these techniques into your conversations. If you want to get better at getting actionable on how to ask these questions, if you want the list that we've made that's broken down on exactly the different variations of each question for each pillar, right? What is it? How long has it been going on for? How has this been affecting you? And how has it been affecting other people? We've got other examples of different questions within that you can ask, so you're not saying the same thing over and over again as you're looping back around. If you want that list, and if you want guidance on how to get better, text CLOSE to 33777. I'd be happy to send that to you free of charge. This is one of the most powerful ways to get people to want to take action. You can absolutely start doing this if you want. You could probably do it just from watching this podcast over and over again and preparing your own questions about the pain points that your potential clients and customers are in. You could do it just from this. But if you want to shortcut that and get that sheet of questions about pain, text CLOSE to 33777. I'm happy to help you out and send that to you for free. I'm Ian Ross. This has been the Close More Sales Podcast.